Today's lesson is Turkish treats, a tour of Turkish desserts. Hi, everybody. I'm Roger.
And I'm Helen.
And if you have a sweet tooth, this is the program for you because we're going to be talking about Turkish desserts or sweet dishes that you can enjoy when you travel to Turkey or when you travel to other places in the world that serve this stuff. And last time, of course, we talked about something called lokum, and we also talked about baklava. They sound awfully sweet. Even though I have a sweet tooth myself, I know I should avoid sweet foods as much as possible. I want to lose weight, and there is diabetes in my family.
Yes, last time we talked about famous Turkish desserts or sweets, dishes that people are familiar with. Baklava exists not only in Turkey, but also in other Middle Eastern countries, even though experts say that baklava was invented in Turkey. And we also looked at Turkish delight. Turkish delight refers to those pieces of sweets that are chewy, colorful, and soft. Now, today we're going to be looking at other treats. However, these treats are not so famous as they are strange.
Indeed. So yes, indeed, when you try food from a different country, you need to be prepared because they might be serving something that you're not used to, and it will take you a little while to get used to that, but it's worth the effort. That's why we travel the world, to try different things and to appreciate different food and culture and stuff like that. And again, we're focusing specifically on Turkey, and we're going to find out some more about Turkish treats. So let's get to it. Let's listen to the first part of our lesson for today, and then we'll come back to discuss it.
Turkey may be home to some famed desserts, but it also has some surprising and unique ones too. For instance, kezme dondurma is an ice cream so thick you need to eat it with a knife and fork. Made from goat's milk and ground orchid tubers, this Turkish specialty is usually served shaped like a brick. Although the orchid powder helps thicken the ice cream, it's actually a special way of preparing the milk that makes the ice cream so solid.
大家好，第一部分我们可以看到单字 famed， 这个字是形容词，指的是著名的或是闻名的。例如 Monica felt that she had to visit the famed sushi restaurant in Tokyo. Monica 觉得自己一定要造访东京那家有名的寿司餐厅。或者 A famed artist was selected for the opening of this new gallery. 一位知名艺术家被相中为这间新艺廊开幕。接下来我们看到名词 specialty， 它的意思是特产、招牌菜或是专长。例如 These delicious jelly-filled donuts are one of Michigan's specialties. 这种塞了果酱的美味甜甜圈是密西根的特产之一。再举一个例子 My dad's specialty is pasta with lobster and garlic. 我爸爸的拿手菜是香蒜龙虾意大利面。
So diving into the first part of today's lesson, the first sentence says, Turkey may be home to some famed desserts, but it also has some surprising and unique ones too. So Turkey is home to some desserts. To be home to something means to be the place or the country where something exists. So I could also say Italy is home to some of the finest red wines, which means a lot of good red wines can be found in Italy. So in Turkey, you can find a lot of famed desserts.
Exactly. If something's famed, it has become famous. And famed and famous are basically the same in meaning. And in this particular case, we're talking about a famous dessert from Turkey, or at least many of them. So Turkey, yes, is home to some famous or famed desserts, but it also has some surprising and unique ones too. So we've got these famed desserts, these popular desserts that you may be familiar with, and it's nothing strange for you to eat them. But they've also got some unusual ones that are special and unique as well, and they might take a little getting used to.
Right. So for instance, there is kezme dondurma. which is an ice cream so thick you need to eat it with a knife and fork. So that is unusual because the ice cream that we know is usually soft and we can eat it on a cone. We can lick it because it's so soft. But this type of Turkish ice cream is really thick. It's so thick that you have to cut it in order to eat it. You have to eat it with a knife and fork.
Exactly. If something's thick, of course, it has a lot of mass. It has a lot of density. So usually when we eat a normal ice cream, we can just lick it with our tongue if it's an ice cream cone, if it's soft serve, or if it's in a dish, we can just use a spoon. But this particular ice cream is so thick that you need to eat it as if it were a steak. You need a knife and fork. Made from goat's milk and ground orchid tubers, this Turkish specialty is usually served shaped like a brick. So this sentence tells us how it's made. First of all, it doesn't use cow's milk. It actually uses goat's milk, which has a different kind of texture and consistency. And it also uses ground orchid tubers. Now, a tuber is something that grows underground and can be eaten. It's like a root that is thick, like a potato or a sweet potato or a yam or whatever. Those are kinds of tubers. In this particular case, these are the tubers of the orchid plant. And orchids, of course, are kinds of flowers. So yes, you've got these orchid tubers. And they take them out of the ground, they dry them up, and then they grind them into a powder. So ground tubers just refers to tubers that have been crushed down into powder.
Right. Now, I've never seen orchid tubers, but if they're anything like regular potatoes, and if you grind regular potatoes, then you know that a thick substance is going to come out as a result. So if you mix that thick substance with goat's milk, which is also quite thick, then I'm not surprised that Turkish ice cream, kezme dondura, is really thick and it can be shaped like a brick. But in any case, this is a Turkish specialty. Now, a specialty is a food or a drink that a place is very well known for. And usually a specialty is something that you can't get anywhere else but at that place. You can also talk about a chef's specialty, which is the specialty of a person. If that person is especially good at preparing that dish, or that person is the only one who knows how to prepare that dish.
Exactly. So this is a Turkish specialty. It's a special kind of food. And yes, indeed, it's often served in the shape of a brick, which of course is used to build walls and houses and things like that. Now, although the orchid powder helps thicken the ice cream, it's actually a special way of preparing the milk that makes the ice cream so solid. So yeah, we've got this orchid powder. Yes, indeed, it does thicken the ice cream. But actually, it's in the way that the goat's milk is prepared that makes this ice cream so thick. Here we've got the word thicken, which means to make something thick. Oftentimes we add ingredients to dishes or whatever to make them thicker so they're more interesting to eat, or they have a harder, more chewy texture or consistency. And yes, indeed, it's all in the process of preparing the milk that makes the ice cream so solid as if it were a steak. And again, you need a knife and fork to eat it. Okay, that brings us to the end of the first part of our lesson for today. Let's move on now and talk about something called tavagosu. Let's listen.
Perhaps the most peculiar dessert you'll try in Turkey is tavagosu. While it has a texture and taste similar to rice pudding, this dessert's main ingredient is actually chicken. The meat is cooked down in milk until they mix together into a pudding. Flavored with cinnamon and vanilla, it's not only one of Turkey's signature desserts, it's also quite tasty.
第二部分我们看到单字 peculiar， 这个字是形容词，指的是奇怪的、古怪的或是独特的。例如 This dish has a peculiar taste, and I can't quite figure out what it is. 这道菜有一种奇怪的味道，而我吃不出到底是什么。或是 Doug's peculiar behavior worried his friends very much. Doug 怪异的行为让他的朋友们很担心。接下来我们看到名词 texture， 意思是质地、口感或是质感。例如 The texture of the cloth was very smooth, making it look very beautiful. 这款布料的质地非常滑顺，让它看起来非常漂亮。或是 The two kinds of cheese were very different in both their taste and texture. 这两种起司不论是在味道或是口感上都非常不同。再来我们看到单字 ingredient， 这个名词有食材或是原料的意思。例如 Rosie ran out of fresh ingredients, so she made the dish with frozen vegetables. Rosie 的新鲜食材用完了，所以她用冷冻蔬菜做这道菜。又或者说 The cooks at this restaurant prefer to use local ingredients. 这间餐厅的厨师偏好使用当地食材。最后我们看到名词 vanilla， 表示香草或是香草精。例如 I love adding a scoop of vanilla ice cream to my apple pie. 我喜欢在我的苹果派上放一球香草冰淇淋。最后一个例子 Vanilla cake topped with cream and cherry is my mom's favorite. 我妈妈最爱香草蛋糕上点缀着鲜奶油和樱桃。
So before we looked at kesme dondura, which is a type of Turkish ice cream, now we're going to move on to another Turkish treat, and it's called tavuk gösu. Perhaps the most peculiar dessert you'll try in Turkey is this particular treat, tavuk gösu. Now, something that is peculiar is strange. But when we use the word peculiar, we're not always describing something that is pleasant. I can say that gorgonzola, which is an Italian cheese, has a very peculiar smell. So if I say that it has a peculiar smell, I'm not saying that it smells wonderful, but it has a very special smell that some people might like and some people might not like.
Like durian, it has a peculiar smell, a peculiar taste, and some people like it, some people hate it. But in any case, this is a peculiar dessert. It's very unique, and again, it's called tavuk gösu. And while it has a texture and taste similar to rice pudding, this dessert's main ingredient is actually chicken. So yes, indeed, you may have had rice pudding before, and if you talk about different kinds of foods, we talk about its consistency, its quality, its characteristics, and we're talking about the texture of this particular dessert. Texture just refers to how it feels in your mouth, how it's constructed. Is it thick? Is it hard? Is it soft? That's the texture. Texture could also be used to refer to the appearance of something, the texture of the paint on the canvas or something, if you're looking at work by Cezanne or somebody like that. And in this particular case, though, this dessert has a special texture that is like rice pudding, maybe kind of chewy or something like that, but its main ingredient is actually chicken. The ingredients are the things that you use to create a special kind of dish.
Right. So if this dish has a texture that's similar to rice pudding, then I imagine it to be creamy. So it's kind of smooth, but at the same time, you have the rice inside. So it's also not very smooth. It also has little bits and pieces. So maybe those bits and pieces are the pieces of chicken. But indeed, it is a very particular dessert, and I've never had a dessert where the main ingredient was a meat.
Interesting. Yeah, a dessert with meat in it sounds unusual, to us at least. The meat is cooked down in milk until they mix together into a pudding. So here you cook something down when you basically cook them together. So you've got the meat in milk, they cook together, and then they mix together into a pudding. Pudding, of course, is something that's kind of chewy and soft. Of course, you've had pudding here in Taiwan. Pudding is oftentimes referred to as sweet food you eat after a meal in the UK, but to us, pudding is a special kind of dessert that is made with eggs and other ingredients.
Right, so this particular dessert is flavored with cinnamon and vanilla. It's not only one of Turkey's signature desserts, it's also quite tasty. So when you flavor something, you're giving it a particular flavor. In this case, you're giving it the flavor of cinnamon and vanilla, which are two types of flavoring that are very popular for desserts. So cinnamon is a type of spice that comes from the bark of a tree, and it's used for making cookies and cakes, especially winter kinds. Cinnamon tastes very good with apples, for instance, and raisins. And vanilla is a flavor that comes from a particular bean. It comes from the vanilla bean, which is very rare and expensive. And vanilla is also used to make ice cream, cookies, and cakes. So when you put these two ingredients together in a dessert, you're sure to come out with a very tasty dessert.
Right. Vanilla is probably the most common flavor of ice cream, at least here in Taiwan and in the United States. But this particular dish is flavored with cinnamon and vanilla, so it becomes a signature dessert of Turkey. If something's a signature something of something, that means it kind of represents that place. It's what you think of when someone asks you, hey, what kind of dessert do you think of when you think of Turkey? Oh, they'll think of tavuk gosu. It's signature or a signature dessert in Turkey. Okay, that brings us to the end of the second part of our lesson. Let's finish things up now by listening to the third and final part.
From the famous to the strange, Turkey's desserts are as delicious as they are fascinating. But of course, if you truly want to learn about these sweet dishes, there's one more thing you need to do. Take a trip to Turkey and go try them all.
So in conclusion, today we are looking at Turkish desserts. We have looked at all kinds, from the famous to the strange. Turkey's desserts are as delicious as they are fascinating. So from something to something just means that it covers a whole range of things that include different aspects of that particular subject. So the famous would refer to baklava and Turkish delight. The strange would refer to tavuk gosu and also the ice cream that's made from goat's milk. Those are strange because I don't think many people have tried them.
Indeed. So this is a range of Turkish desserts, and some of them, of course, are more popular because people can enjoy them more quickly in various parts of the world. But some of them are unusual, and they take some getting used to for most people around the world. But they're still delicious. They're as delicious as they are fascinating. So basically, we're saying they're both delicious and fascinating. If something's fascinating, it's really, really interesting.
That's right. But of course, if you truly want to learn about these sweet dishes, there's one more thing you need to do. Take a trip to Turkey and go try them all. And that's really good advice because you may be able to get some of these desserts here in Taiwan or in places outside of Turkey. But if you want to try Turkish food, Turkish desserts, then you really should go to Turkey because that's where those dishes originated. So, of course, they will taste better there.
Right. Well, I'm not going to Turkey just to try those desserts. Okay, there are other things to see and do in Turkey. But if you are going to Turkey to check out some of those mosques or that underground city or whatever, then while you're there, you should try some Turkish food, especially these Turkish sweet dishes. They probably go very well with Turkish coffee or other beverages. Maybe they have tea time there as well. So again, if you want to check out these sweet dishes, this is what you need to do. You need to take a trip to Turkey and go try them all. Okay, that brings us to the end of our discussion for today. Here comes our Chinese teacher.
各位同学大家好，我是 Hanny。 我们来看今天的文法重点。课文第二部分介绍了一种非常奇特的甜点，是鸡肉布丁。那有一个句子提到说 The meat is cooked down in milk until they mix together into a pudding. 肉在羊奶中熬稠，直到与布丁完全混合。好，句子里面的 cook down 是指熬煮，意思就跟 boil down 相近。那这边就补充一下 boil 这个动词它可以指沸腾煮开，那么 boil down 就是表达用煮沸的方式把水收干，把什么熬浓煮稠。那这样做的时候呢，是不是会留下一整锅的精华呢？ 呢？因此 boil down 还可以引申表达把事物简化或者是归结出最重要或是最基本的元素。那么 boil down to something 常常用来比喻把事情、故事或是讨论等等把它浓缩啊、归结或是简化的意思。举例来说， All these problems boil down to one thing, lack of money. 所有的这些问题可以归结于一件事，就是资金不足，缺钱啦。好，另外补充一些跟 cook 相关的用语。第一个呢，我们用 cook up可以指烹调，做好，像是做好某个菜肴这样子。那它也可以用来比喻构思、杜撰、编造、策划的那些意思哦。像我们说 cook an excuse up 就是指编造一个借口，编一个理由。第二个补充的是 cook one's goose， 这不是煮鹅肉的意思哦，这是个口语用法，意思是毁了某人的计划，让某人彻底失败。那它也可以用被动语态 somebody's goose is cooked 来表达某人的计划被扰乱啊，他丧失了成功的机会，没戏唱了。好，再来第三个补充的是 cook the books， 这当然不是把书拿去煮咯。cook 除了指烹调或是煮，它在英文口语当中有篡改、捏造的意思。那么 book 在这里是指账本、账册。当这意思来解释时，它通常会用复数形。那么 cook the books 就是对账册中的数字动手脚，篡改账目，也就是做假账咯。好，接着读到课文第三部分的第一句，他说 From the famous to the strange, Turkey's desserts... 从知名的到奇怪的，土耳其的甜点怎么样怎么样。好，那么句子里面的 the famous 和 the strange 都是用 the 去加上形容词所组成，我们就来介绍 the 加上形容词的不同意思。第一个呢，我们可以把它用来构成抽象名词，表达某一类抽象的事物。这时候 the 加上形容词，表示点点点的事物或是情况。那通常是视为单数，像 the unknown 未知的事物， the unfamiliar 是指不熟悉的事物。好，第二个呢，我们是用 the 加上形容词来构成普通名词，去表达有什么样特质属性的人，通常视为复数，像 the rich 富人、有钱人， the young 年轻人， the elderly 则是老年人。好，那么以上是今天重点整理，我们回顾今天单字吧。
Famed.This part of town is famed for its many excellent Italian restaurants. Specialty. Chocolate donuts were the bakery's specialty. Peculiar. The peculiar smell made Larry worry that there was a gas leak. Texture. The cookies had a crispy texture that made them great for dipping in milk. Ingredient. Tabitha suddenly realized that she had forgotten to add a key ingredient to the cake mix. Vanilla.Although many people find vanilla ice cream boring, it is the most popular flavor in many surveys.
Discussion Starter starts now!
Here's our discussion starter for today. The question is, which Turkish dessert would you be willing to try and why?
Well, I would like to try kesme dondura because I would like to know what orchid tubers taste like, especially when they're mixed with goat's milk.
Well, I would like to try tavuk gosu, mainly because that word is pretty hard to pronounce, and usually if the word is really hard to pronounce or if it's really strange, that means the food is probably going to be really, really tasty.
Well, everyone, today's article has come to an end, and I sure hope you enjoy reading along with us. I am Helen.
I am Roger.
See you next time.